So this will lead into the next semi-controversial topic, perhaps.
All right. Yeah.
All right. And this might be a teaser question for really a future episode, I'm hoping, because I think there's some interest. And I've heard some interesting things on how AI is being used in drug discovery and drug development. In your opinion, will AI have a major impact in the methods and the speed of drug discovery and development?
Boy, I hope it does. It will. 100% it will. There's no... That is an unequivocal yes. What I don't know is how and where, right?
Welcome to the BioTalk Unzipped podcast, where we unzip the stories behind medical progress by sharing the latest and greatest advances in biopharmaceuticals and medical technologies in a fun, entertaining, and enlightening format. And now your co-hosts, Gregory Austin and Dr. Chad Briscoe.
All right. Now, this next question, this is a can of worms. And this may have to be answered outside, in some other upcoming episodes. But what do you think? This is a broad question. What do you think are the biggest challenges in drug discovery or development today?
Boy, I think my answer has changed a lot from what it would have been 3 or 4 years ago.
Wow.
And the reason I say that is I really am sort of sad, I would say, about the perception of science, right? So science and science has almost become humanized as something that you can hate or think is wrong or like it's a thing, right? So a few years ago, I might have said it's funding cycles, or it's research, or it's something like that. But I think that's a challenge that we're going to have, going forward since the pandemic, is that people not understanding science, not understanding the concept of scientific concepts are ever evolving. Science isn't itself a thing. Right. Unless you think it's just like the broadest study, but you can't say, I don't believe science, or I don't believe this, or I don't believe that. Right. Science isn't even a set of facts, right? A set of facts is a set of facts. Science is to me, it's a process of studying to reinforce those facts, to reinforce knowledge, to learn more, to grow. And so when that sort of term science is co-opted, for different reasons, it's not doing any of us any good. And there's nobody out there, if you hate the pharma industry, or if you think that they're taking advantage of us, and costs and things like that. Like any industry, there's bad actors and there's challenges, and anything that involves money and more than, I think it was my dad that said any business that involves more than one person all of a sudden has politics or bureaucracy built in. There's some saying like that, so you're going to see that in pharma, but we're bringing life-saving medications, life-improving, life-altering medications to people around the world, and everyone has benefited from that. The world economy has benefited. Our health has benefited. I think it'd be really hard to find somebody who's never taken a single drug, and if they're relying on herbal supplements and things like that, guess what? That's science. Somebody is studying and researching those in some way. And if they say they're not, the very individual who's taking that is deciding if it makes them feel better or doesn't make them feel better. They're doing a scientific experiment, right?
There you go.
That's true. During COVID, when people were taking, what was that horse medication people were taking for COVID,
I missed on that.
I forgot what that was. It was a horse antifungal medication people were taking for COVID. I can't remember what it was.
I'm going to have to look that one up. Horse antifungal medication. Was that to prevent it or to treat it?
Right, to treat it. I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know which. But when they were taking that, they were doing science. So they're rebelling against science, but they were doing science on themselves, right? And they were testing
those
their
hypocrites.
own.
How dare they?
They were testing their hypothesis. They were testing their own hypothesis. Yeah, I think that this drug that's on the market for something else will cure my, and I guess, I personally like to leave expert work to the experts, right? So,
Sure.
I don't ask the guy, I didn't pour my patio 2 weeks ago, my concrete patio, right? Because there's somebody who's
Right.
going to do a lot better job, and I didn't second guess the work he's doing. And
Yeah.
I don't
Looks
really
good, by
believe
the
in
way.
second. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks. Yeah. You just saw
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I left that to the experts, and I think whatever space, I really believe in, let's, especially when your life's on the line, let's leave some of this to experts. But anyways, I think I digressed from whatever that original question was, but yeah, it's the co-opting sites. I remember it was about,
Right.
what's
It
my
was
concern?
What's the biggest challenge? And you're right. I think that has changed. So I think you've heard it here. Science is not a conspiracy theory. It's science.
Right. Science is not,
and it's not politics. It's, and so unfortunately these things, opinions and ideas and ideologies and belief systems kind of twist that. I think, why do you think that is? I have my opinion. I think people just, I think it's, and here I'm going to come in with a conspiracy theory now, and be a hypocrite. But basically, I think because the educational system in our country is lacking, in my opinion, at least in the public system, that people just aren't. And well, it's a combination of that and the devices that we use and the convenience of scrolling and Netflix and everything's there on demand. And now we got Chat GPT. Now we really don't have to think for ourselves, right? And people don't know how to look things up. And it goes, and fortunately, it's just not our kids. Like my 9-year-old will hear something about Minecraft and he hears it on a YouTube kids video and he talks about it like it is absolute fact. And then he and my older son will get into an argument about it. He's like, no, that's just a mod. And, they get into this whole thing, but he's believing it because someone's trying to speak with authority under, behind a microphone and show you something. And that doesn't make it true or real. And you got to do your own research. I'm like, well, what's the source? Well, what's the source of source? And so on until you can actually find the truth. And sometimes you never really know, but that's where, science comes in because they're constantly rigorously testing. Does this work under this condition? Yes or no? Yeah. Okay. No. All right. We're going to try it under this condition. We're going to try something new and so forth. And so I think we need to continue pushing education so people aren't trying to come up with random ideas and just preaching, having an open mind. And maybe you're wrong. It's possible. Anyway.
Yeah. I think, things like education and the environment. And when we think about investing in areas like that, I think, well, maybe we accidentally spend too much, but that sounds like a good place to accidentally spend too much money, when we look at, when we look at how we fund that. And I do think a lot of it's education, but I think as scientists in this day and age, one of the responsibilities we also do have is to do some of that education when we get the opportunity, right? So, so help bring common sense, scientific thinking, a rationale, sharing some of this idea that, the word science isn't a conspiracy theory. I love that. That sounds like a t-shirt.
Right. We're going to make those.
All right. Yeah, do it. But I think when, as a scientist and I think anybody who's in the biotech industry, to me, is a scientist in somebody's eyes, right? We all have a different perspective on that, but we all have an obligation somewhat to help educate people on what's the right way and the wrong way to approach things and how to think about things. Right. And to be sympathetic to individuals who don't have the knowledge and to think, wow, okay, that perspective that they're getting or that understanding that they have comes from a very different level of education and understanding, and to try and I would say meet them where they're at, right?
So I think that's wise. With kindness.
I don't want to, if somebody's afraid of an mRNA vaccine, it's not going to help with me saying, starting to talk about ribosomes and transcription and DNA to RNA and why that doesn't cause COVID, right? That's not going to help somebody, right? We got to take it down a notch and really talk about the basics and so meet them where they're at to help people understand some of those aspects.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
So
that was good.
yeah,
That was a good conversation.
yeah, yeah.
So this will lead into the next semi-controversial topic,
All
perhaps.
right. Yeah.
All right. And this might be a teaser question for really a future episode, I'm hoping, because I think there's some interest. And I've heard some interesting things on how AI is being used in drug discovery and drug development.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, will AI have a major impact in the methods and the speed of drug discovery and development?
Boy, I hope it does. It will. 100% it will. There's no that is an unequivocal yes. What I don't know is how and where, right? Who's going to find the
Yeah.
right opportunities? It's already happening for sure. That's without a doubt. But but who who's going to take advantage of it? How are they going to make it
Right.
happen? How are they going to find a way to do that? I've thought in, for instance, in the bioassay space, we have so many methods out there. We ought to be able to dump them all into one, AI, generator or AI pool of knowledge. Let AI chew on that for a bit. And why can't it develop our assays for us, right? Like, if it's seen, 50,000 different compounds with 50,000 different assays,
Right.
let it figure out what the best, next best assay is, right? But there's challenges to get there.
Sure.
If you could go that route, if you can use AI to develop, smarter clinical trials, and there's just tons and tons of different directions you can go. And in our company, we were having a conversation about this, about how we can, get AI, how do we want to leverage AI? And so the first thing that one of my colleagues did was, went to Chat GPT and had it tell him how to use AI to use AI. So,
Right.
so I saw his output and I went, well, that was pretty smart. So what's Chad do? Because I'm like sitting there like making notes. I'm like, God, I got to come up with like at least 10 things here. He came up with 25 in 5 minutes.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, this is I'll just do this, and I did it, and it's like, threw out 12 great ideas or something like that, and 10 of them I liked, and 2 of them I threw out. So I think that's the other thing we need to think about with AI, where it's at right now, right? You get 12 great ideas, or you get, it gets you 95% of the way there, and then you got to make it your own. That's certainly where AI is at right now. But it's
Agreed.
The answer to the question is simple. Yes, AI will positively impact drug development, and in fact, it already is.
And I've seen that as well. I know AI is being used today to visually analyze tissue samples, like on a slide, to find the biomarkers, and then highlight them in the colors, so you can verify and look at those and find them more rapidly than people painstakingly going through and looking through each one individually. So it can speed up that process, and perhaps it can even build molecules. And I don't know how it's going to test molecules against a cancer target, but I'm sure there's a way for that to happen with robotics at some point.
So I just heard about a study. This was in one of the podcasts I was listening to. Might have been Science Friday. I can't remember for sure, but in that little vignette, they were talking about a study where they took, I think it was 400 or 4,000 compounds, something like that. And they had humans go through with these known compounds and known structures and do the sort of odor test, right? So they had,
Sure.
Where they smell it, it smells like this, it smells like that. And they went through and they tested it. And then they introduced a bunch of different structures that weren't studied. And they just, so they dumped all that data in the AI, and then they just gave the AI a bunch of structures, chemical structures. And they said to the AI, what does it smell like? And the AI was able to say what it smells like. Wow. And then they had humans go back and smell them. And it was astonishingly correct. In fact, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the AI was more correct than the individual people. So it was absolutely amazing, right? So it just looked at, okay, here's 1,000 structures or whatever. And it learned how things smell. Based on people saying this is how it is. But then it just learned trends of molecular structures and how they smell. So now
That's
AI is it's even going to tell us how things smell. But if it can do that, why can't it tell you, what what receptor is this going to bind to, right? Like if we can look
Right.
at a compounds in the proteome and say, what compounds are going to affect these pathways, and just tell me, which here's the structure, which pathway or which proteome, and it could process billions in minutes.
Something in it.
So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I think another thing that AI is teaching us, whether good, bad, or indifferent, is how to ask better questions.
Yeah.
Because that's all Chat GPT is. It's garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
So so there's already tons of YouTube videos out there that are teaching us, okay, if you want to get certain things out of it, you have to ask the right questions. And if you ask the right questions and the right follow-up questions, you're going to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's the future of education as AI grows and we have access, all the knowledge is there, right? You just have to have access to it through a screen or your phone. Maybe it comes down to less about remembering facts and figures and more about how do I ask the right question to get to the information I want to know.
Greg, did you know there's a job now, and it's a 6-figure paying job at some companies, to be an AI prompt writer? So yeah. So
really?
it's
I
yeah.
did not know that.
I heard this, and they were talking about actually quite astonishing salaries. I think a salary
That's
that both
crazy.
of us would probably trade, writing AI prompts in support of. I think this person maybe worked for a marketing company or something, but
Wow.
yeah, to write AI prompts. Yeah,
That's news. That's new news.
that's new news. Yeah, and that job did not exist
Wow.
a year ago, right?
No,
Nowhere in the world.
No one even thought about it. Yeah. That is something. All right. Yep. I'm gonna switch gears again,
Sure.
and this is gonna kind of go back to we were talking about trying to meet people where they are, right? So this is a random hypothetical question. All right.
Okay.
Let's say we get Travis Kelce to somehow endorse our podcast. I know I'm dreaming big here. And some of the Swifties get on board. And what would you say to them? What would you want them to know about this industry? Or what would be the biggest takeaway from that conversation about what's actually happening within our industry?
Ooh, so I think what I would want to tell people, and come across, hopefully through my own caring and my own, both love for the industry and the science, but also my interest in what our industry really does, is say we have an industry of whatever it is, a few million people that work in pharma, that for the most part, and I would say almost to a letter, everyone that I interact with or ever have interacted with wants to do everything they can to put new drugs, new science forward to enhance human health in some way or another. And that you need to believe in that, and believe that the people who are working in this industry are doing everything they can in a space that they love to bring new drugs and medications to market, that will help them, that will touch them, that will touch their family, somehow in their life. It's gonna touch them profoundly someday, and
it will.
and I'm deeply appreciative to people who have come before me working on drugs that my family is taking now, that are improving my life, my family's lives, with all sorts of different medications.
No, absolutely. And I can verify that as an outside observer to a certain extent, and someone who's not a scientist. When I was putting together those conferences for the Boston Society and meeting and working with a lot of scientific leaders just across the board, I would go to these conferences and I would see myself just observing the interactions between, here's a scientist from Novartis, here's one from Pfizer, here's one from Merck. And in the business sense, these are all competitors. They want their drug to win. But in the space of the science and what drives them and what they care about is they don't care about that. They don't, it's
No.
not about the competitive. It's about how can we make bioanalysis better? How can we make drug discovery better? What are you doing that's working great?
Yeah.
How can I make those improvements in my lab? And what are the regulators going to do next?
Yeah.
And how can we be prepared? And it was a camaraderie, and it really was a very collegial type of environment. Yet it was a bunch of business people with science degrees
Yeah.
in that space. And it was really cool. And that definitely inspired me.
Yep.
And made me fall in love with the industry more because of having really that experience. And one thing I meant to share early on is when what got me, I meant to say this, why I got into this industry to begin with.
I was going to ask you that actually.
Yeah. No, that's actually a good story. So I want to share that, and I may end up editing this to the beginning of the bio so people know. But what happened is I was working in the housing industry, and before that I was in the data center industry, and it's kind of funny. You could tell what industry was going to fail because that was the one I was in at the moment. Because they had the dot bomb went and they went out of business. And then I get to the housing industry, and I was doing marketing and support work for them at this big brokerage firm. And then the floor fell out in 2005. And I'm just like, what's going on? Well, during that time, I moved in with my parents to help my dad because he was recovering from surgery. He had melanoma. 17 years earlier, he had just a big tumor removed from his back, about yay long. And he was doing great, going through all his checkups, everything's fine. Then all of a sudden he started having these mental status changes. And so that means you just forget how to do stuff.
Yeah.
And he's trying to figure out how to work the remote to the TV. My mom's like, that's not right. And he's forgetting a couple other things. So she got him to the doctor, and he had a pretty big mass up right in here in his brain. And it was clearly a tumor. It was clearly cancer. Very scary time. But it was very operable because of where it was in his brain. And so they did the surgery, got it removed. A lot of it was so big and was putting so much pressure on his brain, which was causing him to have headaches and forget how to do stuff because it's close to the frontal cortex. And it turned out it was a big hematoma. And it was melanoma that had metastasized in his brain, which is notorious for causing brain bleeds. And so I ended up helping, my mom with his recovery and staying with him for a while. And here I am in this small town in South Carolina. And I happened across a really great guy, by the way, Tom Scholl, who ran this small recruiting firm called MRI Seneca in Seneca, South Carolina. And we got together, and he explained what he did. He thought I'd be a fit, and I was interested. And he says, okay, great. Now pick a major. What do you want to recruit on? And so I went through a process, but I very quickly landed on biotech pharma science because I selfishly wanted to see if I could find clinical trials for my dad. And that's what I did. So I got in, I dove in, he got trained very well on how to do it. And I just started talking to people. In fact, one of the first people I spoke to, remember this, Masha Kononov, if you're listening, you're one of the first people I was working with and got to know more about the science just by having that conversation. And that was kind of fun and exciting. Long story short, I did talk to a neurologist or a neuroscientist and explained to him what was going on. I said, hey, do you know any clinical trials? He goes, there's nothing for that. Today there may be opportunities with cell and gene therapy, but back then, this is 13 years ago, there wasn't anything, and that was kind of sad. It wouldn't have mattered, I think, unless there was some just incredible breakthrough, because he was doing great for a few months, and then he had 7 new tumors that came in all over his brain, and there's nothing you could do at that point. And the blessing was he kind of went on his terms. He was at home. We were there the moment he passed. And so he was around people he loved at that moment. But that's kind of what started my career into that. And I enjoyed being in the industry and learning about the science, and just even the new technologies 13 years ago were pretty phenomenal to me. And we have taken leaps and bounds above that since that time. Cell and gene therapy wasn't even a thing back then, wasn't really discussed at this level. So that's what got me into this. And I started out in recruiting, and that's that I've been with it as much as I could ever since. I moved to Kansas City, and not that in Kansas City until I found Pro Pharma, and they found me, and it's been a good marriage of that since. Yeah, we're going to continue every month. We're going to start having guests that we're getting lined up shortly. But if you have questions, if there's things that you want to know about or things you would love to hear about, or just questions in general that we can answer during the next episode, please send us a message, put it on LinkedIn, put it into the YouTube comments, wherever you can find us, and we'll go through that and see if we can get those answered for you. So we'd love to have that give and take.
You bet.
All right.
Yeah, Greg, thanks a lot. I'm really looking forward to all this experience with you and sharing and mentoring and providing simplified science and
yes.
Doing this for the next for the foreseeable future, however long
Absolutely.
this run lasts. Yeah, this is going to be a good time. All right.
Absolutely. Very, very enjoyable. Again, we're BioTalk Unzipped. I'm Gregory Austin. I'm here with my co-host, Chad Briscoe, and we'll sign off for this time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Thanks.